Hi, my name is David Lukas. I'm a naturalist in Portland, Oregon, and I have come down to Galveston, Texas. First time in Galveston, my first time on a barrier island. I'm trying to understand this place, where to go for bird watching, where to see wildlife, where to find the best natural areas. And so this video is an insight into the places that I discovered, the people that I met, and the things that I learned about Galveston Island. And I hope it inspires you to come down to Galveston also and find some of these places. On my visit to Galveston, I had the good fortune of connecting with the Galveston Island Nature Tourism Council, a partnership of organizations working together to encourage and promote the protection and enjoyment of Galveston's natural landscapes. Many visitors and residents alike cherish the island's unique values, and a surprising number of organizations are helping to protect wild places on Galveston Island, including Artist's Boat, Houston Audubon, and the state parks. The Galveston Island Nature Tourism Council sent me out with 3 local experts who introduced me to the island's ecology and some of their favorite spots on the island. This included expert naturalist Steve Alexander, author of Exploring Galveston, a naturalist guide to the island, Greg Whittaker, local bird expert and animal husbandry manager at Moody Gardens, and Kristen Vail, Coastal Program Coordinator for the American Bird Conservancy. Galveston is located on the Texas Gulf Coast, and it is famous as one of the premier birding spots in the United States. Galveston Island itself is part of a long chain of barrier islands that stretch south into Mexico. Understanding the layout of Galveston Island is pretty straightforward. It's a straight shot on the highway from Houston, and as you cross onto the island, there are 2 main choices. Either continue straight ahead on the main street until you reach Seawall Boulevard, or else turn right on 61st Street to reach Seawall. Seawall Boulevard runs the full length of the island and provides easy access to all of the island's birding locations. With this framework in mind, let's start at Galveston Island State Park, the large green area near Jamaica Beach, halfway down the island. Galveston Island State Park. Wow. Amazing expanse of salt marsh habitat in here. 2,000 acres, I believe this park is, and it stretches from one side of the island to the other. Over here is the bay side. This is Galveston Bay. We're looking out into the salt marshes, fingering out into the bay. And here in this mix of sloughs and open water and islands, there's a series of trails. There's hiking trails and also paddling trails, so you can bring a kayak or a canoe. And then from here, the park stretches across the width of the island to the ocean behind me, or the ocean behind the camera, and you can walk along native dune habitat there along the ocean. So quite an impressive representation of the habitat here, the full sweep from bayside to ocean side and all the habitats in between, and in between the 2 waters is the coastal prairie that's here. And they're also doing a lot of cordgrass restoration work out here. From aerial photographs, you can see circular mounds in the water, and that's where they're piling up dirt. And then on those elevated surfaces, they're planting cordgrass around the perimeter. They can get established there, and then from that, more sediment begins to accumulate, and you begin to recreate a salt marsh habitat to replace the areas that have been lost, I think, to hurricanes maybe. But this whole mix in here of prairie, salt marsh, water, there's some copses of trees behind us here, is really impressive, and includes everything from freshwater prairie potholes to salt marsh to ocean beach. It's a very impressive park and well worth spending a good portion of a day out here. For these reasons, Steve Alexander first took me to Galveston Island State Park to introduce me to some of the island's distinctive habitats, starting with the salt marsh habitat.
Okay, we're in a salt marsh area on the backside of Galveston Island, and one of the things you see here is characteristic of salt marshes on the island. This is called a salt flat or a mud flat, and it's an area where no vegetation grows. And the reason being that when the tide comes in and then the tide goes out, it leaves little pools of water, and that water evaporates in the heat of the day and leaving the salt behind. And the salt accumulates in the soil and to such an extent that nothing can grow in these areas.
However, one plant that does well in salt marshes is cordgrass. And Steve explained to me that cordgrass survives here by excreting salt from glands on its leaves. Despite the uniformity of this habitat, Steve was quick to point out the rich variety of life here, ranging from ubiquitous periwinkles to a skittish hermit crab to a remarkable sighting of a mass feeding of fiddler crabs, with the males having one giant claw for fighting. Moving away from the salt marshes, we entered a coastal prairie habitat, where grasses and shrubs grew around small ponds called prairie potholes. From there, we headed out to the open beach.
Everything you see down the beachfront here is natural. This is part of Galveston Island State Park. And the thing about the park is they don't remove any seaweed, they don't remove any logs, any types of tree trunks, branches, etc. that come ashore.
I was surprised to learn from Steve that Galveston cleans many of its beaches every day, but at a wild beach like at Galveston Island State Park, you can find all kinds of treasures. And Steve found a wide variety of shells and sea life to show us. As you can imagine, on an island like Galveston, beaches and beach ecology are very important issues. So I spent a day with Kristen Vail, who studies shorebirds that nest on beaches and whose lives are deeply impacted by all this human activity.
The seawall was constructed after the 1900 hurricane, which was one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history at the time. At least 6,000 people perished during the Great Hurricane. And so Galveston actually was a really large city at that time, so they built this seawall to protect the city. The seawall naturally erodes the beach. Replenished, yes, thank you. And this beach here in front of us has recently been replenished this summer, late this summer. Piping plovers spend their winters with us, or they're here during their migratory season. They do not nest on our beaches, but they're here for about 75% of their annual life cycle. So that's almost 9 months out of the year. So, and on top of that, approximately 50% of the entire piping plover population winters on the Texas coast. So all of Texas is incredibly important for the species. We're headed to San Luis Pass, and it's a hot spot for a bunch of ducks, like redheads and scaup.
From the wide sandy beaches of San Luis Pass, we traveled the full length of the island to see the bird-rich beaches and lagoons at East Beach Park, another important wild area.
So we are following along the Easton Lagoon Nature Preserve. It's about a 600-acre preserve with mixed habitats, marsh habitat, coastal prairie, this beautiful lagoon that follows the property, salt flats in there, great for bird watching, great for fishing and kayaking and nature viewing. We're walking towards the inlet of the island where the mouth of Galveston Bay meets with the Gulf of Mexico. This is another wide section of the island because we're at an inlet, so the beach is very wide here, and another great shorebird, waterbird, seabird hotspot.
This entire area at the east end of the island provides easy access to lagoons, beaches, and dunes. Kristen was right, this is fantastic habitat for birds, and I found myself returning multiple days to watch the birds here. Even though I loved watching birds at the East End, I knew there were still many places on the island I had not visited yet. So one morning I joined Greg Whittaker to explore back roads and hidden pockets of habitat.
Really nice for, just driving around on these roads. You could spend hours just kind of looking at these little pocket marshes and
Now we're on the west side of that.
So yeah, we're on the sort of the northwest side of that. We're going to be coming into 103rd Street, which is the other border road that runs north and south across the island. And this is actually where we're going to be bordering the Galveston Bay Foundation Sweetwater Marsh Preserve, or Sweetwater Bayou Preserve. Just kind of a neat access point to the bay. A lot of fishermen come out here and use this to get out into the wading areas out here. It's nice to see the confluence of habitat here between the coastal prairie down through the salt marsh habitat, and then you've got some artificial barrier reef system out here that's set up to kind of cut down the wave wash and develop a little bit more of the natural accretion of sediments and the salt marsh habitat growing out. So this is the very end of 103rd Street.
After checking out 103rd Street, Greg and I spent hours dipping in and out of little country roads on the north side of Stewart Road, including stopping at the Coastal Heritage Preserve along Sedagast Road.
So Galveston as a barrier island, the things that you'll see this progression of habitats from the beach. So you'll get pelagic birds and some of the nearshore birds on the beach. You get the beach and the dune habitat. Behind the dune, you get into this coastal prairie habitat. You'll get interspersed areas where you may have a little bit higher elevation, and you'll get woodland habitat, the woodlot kind of thing. And then as you progress towards the bay side, you get back into the salt marsh, the intertidally influenced salt marsh habitat, and then the bay habitat. So again, on the course of a 1 mile transect across Galveston Island, you're going to get 6 or 7 different habitats all in one shot, which is really, really interesting, and it provides for a lot of good birding opportunities year-round, but particularly in those migratory timeframes.
Without a doubt, my favorite side road off Stewart Road was 8 Mile Road to Sportsman Road, which puts you deep into salt marsh habitat. So these marshes out here are amazing. You can walk for a long ways out here or drive very slowly in these quiet, peaceful country roads. There's herons, cormorants, probably rails. I haven't seen one yet, but I'm sure there's rails in here. Roseate spoonbills just took off a minute ago. Right here along the sloughs, along the edge of the road, and the marshes stretch way off. Large groups of birds here, a lot of activity. And I just love the peaceful feeling of being out on these quiet roads. You don't have to worry about traffic. There's places to pull over, places to bird watch. I've been driving along with the windows down on both sides of the car, monoculars out, camera out, ready for anything, stopping, spending time with birds. It's really peaceful. This is a great spot. Great way to get away from town. I'm on Sportsman's Road off of 8 Mile Road, and this is a long stretch out here of just beautiful habitat. Another intriguing and very different stop off Stewart Road is Lafitte's Cove Nature Reserve on Eckert Road. All right, so this is Lafitte Cove Nature Preserve. We are on Eckert Road, just a few blocks in from Stewart Road. Easy access to put you right into this magnificent habitat. This is swale marsh. It's one of the three kinds of marsh in the island. There's salt marsh, which is very brackish and salty. And then there's two freshwater habitats. There's coastal prairie potholes, and then there's swale habitat. So this swale habitat is pretty unique. I'm not familiar with this, but these are linear bands of open water and marsh that are trapped between old sand dunes, which are parallel sand dunes. The higher spots where the sand dunes were are now occupied by bands of vegetation, trees and shrubs. And then the low-lying areas in between are marshy and wet, and where there's enough water, there's open bands of water. And this Lafitte Cove Nature Preserves protects an excellent example of it, which shows you the kinds of birds that come to these habitats. We're seeing a lot of ibis around us, and behind me were two species of teal. We had blue-winged teal and cinnamon teal, but I'm sure there's other birds there, and also some turtles. It's a beautiful example of this kind of habitat, and easy walk on this boardwalk, very short walk. And there's a lot of birds flitting around. Honestly, I don't know what these are. I think a lot of them are warblers. But there's like chacking of grackles and blackbirds. There's a phoebe flying around right there. And I just have not yet gotten a good close look at these warblers to identify what they are. And I'm not an expert on what's here right now. I think probably a lot of them are one of the yellow-rumped warblers. Yes, there's a yellow-rumped warbler, two yellow-rumped warblers, so I think that's probably what the most common one would be right now. But the important thing is I'm just noticing a lot of sound around me, even if I'm not seeing birds conspicuously in front of me at the moment. The bushes all around here seem to be full of birds right now. Maybe I'm in the middle of a group that's moving through, but boy, this is really nice. It's a group of shovelers swimming in front of a habitat that's entirely new to me. This is a live oak woodland, but it's in a cluster. It's called a motte, and it's just like a kind of a dense, isolated woodland habitat. And the local Texan term for it is motte. Never heard of that before. I had to look it up actually, and it's a great word, M-O-T-T. And it's apparently great habitat for birds, especially in the spring when birds are arriving and are flying over the Gulf, and they see a patch of habitat like this, and they come right out of the sky and drop into these trees as a place to rest, begin feeding and recovering from their trans-Gulf migration. Another well-known patch of woodland is the Core Wood Nature Sanctuary near the Galveston Ferry Terminal. It offers several short trails and water features, but it was very quiet when I was there, so I didn't linger long on this trip. But speaking of the ferry, my very best day on Galveston was the day I took the ferry to Bolivar Peninsula, across from Galveston Island. Here, the building of a long rock jetty designed to stop sediment from entering the shipping channel has created a vast beach and marsh system that is now a globally significant spot for birds. And I have to agree, in terms of birds, it was one of the most amazing places I've experienced in my life. I visited two major spots on the Bolivar Peninsula. First, I turned off the highway on 17th Street to reach the jetty, where I had tremendous views of mudflats and marshes. And then I headed a little further east to Redolin Road, which takes you to the beach where you can access the world-famous Bolivar Flats. So I've been running around, going to lots of different destinations, and decided to set aside some time today to come out the Bolivar Peninsula, and I just really slowed down here. I've been just sitting for long periods of time, kind of just enjoying how I can soak up all the birds here. Just feel so much peace. There's no people out here, both on the outer coast and on the jetty, and I could just sit with the birds for long periods of time. Being out here in the Bolivar Peninsula brings home a point that Kristen Vail made to me at the American Bird Conservancy that I hadn't really appreciated so much until I got here, which is that bringing people out here to birdwatch and come experience the natural world here, appreciate the birds, also means that more people are pushing into their habitat, and there's a real need for respecting the birds and giving them some space because so many people want to see the birds. And I had not felt that anywhere as strongly as I have here at Bolivar Peninsula, because out here I'm on the open beach with large groups of birds that are sleeping and resting completely at peace. The only spot on the whole coast where I found that's been free of disturbance, where the birds can just be themselves and find some security. As I wrap up a week at Galveston Island, I wanted to say I feel very blessed and thankful to have come here. This is a really magnificent place, especially for birds. I'm also very thankful to the Galveston Island Nature Tourism Council and the wonderful folks that they put me in touch with, Steve Alexander, Greg Whittaker, and Kristen Vail, along with the director of the council, Julie Ann Brown. Just a fabulous crew of folks that have really helped me understand this island. And they did an awesome job of showing me some of the best spots and introducing me to the island, and I'm very thankful for this experience.